anniversary Sunday. If when you see your pastor, you would be kind enough to thank him for extending me this invitation. He and his wife are my dear friends and friends to my family. Tremendous student, and I had him as an opportunity to work with him as he was developing the craft of preaching and understanding ministry and the Bible. And so he was a tremendous preacher. I had thought that he would probably be called to Episcopalian church or something. So that's a running joke with him and I. But I'm grateful to be here. He invited me, Elder Kevin, to go to his Facebook page and to check out your message. And so I did that. And so he's very proud of your work. And Elder Donald, I share that with you all because there are enough preachers in this fellowship that he really needed not call me. In fact, I was beginning to feel some kind of way because I had not been here in a while. The beauty is you blew me away, Elder Donald, when you made that comment about if anything were to happen to him, that you all would call me and my wife. I did not know that. And so I am touched beyond measure to hear such a thought. And thank you for your kind introduction. She teases me when I come. She thinks that I had the congregation in therapy. So she sees me as the therapist. So she asked you to hold on to your seat. There are a couple of places in here where you may need to put your seatbelt on. There are a couple of spots that you may want to tweet and put on Facebook for me. Let's pray. I do not know if the blessing sought will come in just the way I thought. But leave my prayers with him alone, whose will is wiser than my own. Assured that he will grant my quest or send some answer far more blessed. And so I pray and calmly wait, for this I know, God answers prayers. Will God grant for our time together this day a glance into glory. O Lamb of God, who taketh away the sins of the world, bless now this moment of preaching. And grant that it does somebody some good. In the name of him who is our guide through paths unknown, our light in dark places, our hope for a brighter tomorrow. In that name we pray. Amen. Amen. Let me thank my wife and son who's traveling with me today. In fact, they are my strong supporters. And whether or not you say amen or not, they're my amen. You might tell me that it was a good message, but they tell me the real truth. Yeah. Scripture this morning that lends itself to our understanding and consideration. Actually, 3 verses of scripture. I added the last verse this morning. It's coming to us from the book of Romans, Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, and then concluding with verse 21 as our third and final verse. I'm reading from the King James translation, and the Word of God reads as follows. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Here's the text for the morning. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. And then Paul ends with the benediction at verse 21. He says, be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. The Message Bible puts it in this context. Don't let evil get the best of you. Get the best of evil by doing good. Amen. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. Those of you who work with the pastor, since I have not had opportunity to be with you in class setting, here's a truth that I share with all preachers that I work with. It is possible to have a good message, but it not be for the right crowd. Okay. Amen. It's possible to have a great message, but it be a message for the wrong crowd. So I texted him and I said to him, what is it that you guys have been working on? Not asking for any suggestions to preach, but just what is it that you all been working on? And he told me a couple of things. He texted me back. One of which that stands large in my mind is this context of Christian character, Christian behavior, Christian context. Based on that, I want to talk to you and talk to the fabric of your mind from the sermonic theme, take the high road. Take the high road. So the text that commends itself for theological examination at this tick of the hour is a text that is either mothballed or glossed over nowadays. Not many who do this work preach from it. With the lens of deep theological reflection, it is a text that calls for personal reflection, personal examination, listen to this, self-confrontation, and ultimately a call to personal action that would emulate the very essence of who we claim to represent as ambassadors of Christ. Talking to you this morning from the subject, taking the high road. I suspect we could reduce by a large number violence in our country and in our communities if people could stand in their tracks long enough to get to know themselves, to know who they are and whose they are. They could possibly increase their own self-worth. The writer of the text is believed to be the Apostle Paul. Though some scholars differ whether it is indeed Paul or not, scholars have argued that this letter, this epistle, does not quite fit the writings of the way in which Paul would write. And so when we speak about Paul's writings in this context, we speak in terms of what's called in seminary disputed and undisputed epistles. Some scholars argue that Paul was writing to the church at Ephesus. And at the time of our text, Paul had not yet visited Rome. However, scholars do agree that the church in Rome to whom Paul was writing was not a church that he founded, but had friends who were members of the congregation. And it is believed that this letter was written to introduce himself to the larger congregation because he wanted a positive, rather an impactful reputation to precede him, understanding the fact that first impressions are only made once, my brothers and sisters. And once made, they cannot be taken back, but they become then lasting impressions. And so he wanted to be a part of that positive impression. He wanted folk to have a positive impression about him. And so he writes ahead of time before he gets to that place. I'm trying to tell you that it's a letter about Christian conduct. It's not a letter about judgmental behavior, but about Christian context and conduct. Here Paul is credited with writing to make the mysteries of Jesus real in the lives of those who have chosen Christ as their model for living. I want to tell you real quick right here that you don't have to be a Christian to know that some behaviors are simply incongruent with the plans and purposes God has for your life. There ought to be a moral compass. There ought to be some sense of your understanding that you have a center. And you don't need to be a Christian to know right and wrong when you're in touch with your center. And therefore, we must always use our higher order thinking when we ask ourselves, how would Jesus handle the situation? You name the situation. The situation is unique to you. And given your situation and given your circumstances, in the context of being a Christian, how then would Jesus handle what you have to handle when you leave here? And so Paul wrestled, just as every preacher must, with sincere passion to communicate his theological understanding of Christ to all he encountered. That's the charge that is upon us. He had hoped that people would catch on fire for Christ by his own passion for Christ and cause others, hear me, to become contagious with that same zeal to claim Christ as their everything, with an understanding without him in your life you are nothing. And he is not offering them, listen, he is not offering them emotionalism. Amen. He is not offering them Sunday morning entertainment where we are made to shout in the church and leave the same fool that we came when we came into the place. Because we spend all of our time trying to make people feel good as opposed to trying to make them think. And so he's not offering them any gimmicks, any false scams. He's simply offering them, get this, the prescription that healed his criminal mind and his propensity to violent behavior and ruthlessness and nastiness and coldness. You do know that a good dose of Christ will clean you up. So Paul understood himself to be living between the right now and the not yet. In other words, there's a good life right now that you and I can enjoy. But the good life right now is not the life to be compared to the life that's even greater when this is over. That's the message that Paul is trying to share with the community. But you just missed your opportunity to shout. And so to know when this life ends, to know that there's a brand new chapter that you have yet to experience that you know not of, because of your belief in him, then you are believing when this is over that you're going to meet him. And to live with the hope of life after this is to live in the now. Listen, with anticipatory participation of what is to come. Oh, that was heavy. It is a claim that the life of the future ahead of us, and to get out of step, listen, with the present. Most of us are trying to get in step. And most of us are trying to get in step with our wobble step. But Paul is trying to say to us that we must hear the music from a different frequency. And what's after the wobble, baby, wobble? What's after that? He's trying to get us to understand that the melody of transformation, be not ye conformed, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. And he's trying to get us to understand that the melody of transformation is the music that takes us on the high road. When God causes you, Listen to this. To have a one-on-one conference with yourself.
Yes.
Stuff in your life that you can't run from. But you have to go to God for to process so that you can get through, lest you lose your mind trying to figure it out.
Amen.
And so there are circumstances in your life that causes God cause you rather to have a one-on-one with yourself. Every believer ought to have regular quiet time with the Lord. You are no match. If you think you are, I'm here to tell you that you are no match for the hell that's out there waiting for you. You're no match for that. And you can't handle that without Christ in your life in the context of being a Christian. And so if you can't find your quiet space because you're so busy, let me help you understand something. God will serve as your personal armor bearer. He will serve as your usher and usher you to that place that forces you to have to spend time with Him and call on Him. I'm not talking there about no elaborate prayer. I'm talking about something as simple as, Lord, help. Come down to the heart of what I want to talk to you about. So he says to us, be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Who better to talk to us about life than those who have been through it?
Who better?
That's the lesson that the young people won't get.
Lord.
They think that what they are going through is unique and new to them, without ever understanding that many of us have been down the road you trying to go down. Why don't you not go down the road and listen to my story? So Paul's advice is authentic. I'm trying to tell you this morning. You can trust Paul's advice because Paul at one time had been conformed to his world and by the circumstances of his day and time. His rap sheet was as long as his arm. No doubt the news anchors of his day had identified him as public enemy number one. And this went on until he had a major collision on the Damascus Road that caused the road to be shut down. And from that life-altering experience, he then called himself a prisoner of Jesus Christ. Because he was sold out for Christ once Christ came into his life. One of the important aspects of Sunday worship, come on with me now. One of the important aspects of Sunday worship is that time set apart for Sunday worship, is that one time of the beginning of the week where you must bring to the moment of worship your A game. You must bring to the center the best mind that you can bring. You must bring to the worship moment the emptiness of who you are. You must bring to this moment when you are able to turn off the noise that's in your life. And worship has to be more than something to make you feel good. The sermon I'm trying to help us understand must cause us to reflect at a deeper level. You must make the decision in here that you're going to live for Christ at a level that you would die for him. One hardly sees this behavior anymore, but in years past, and you can tell by the wisdom, when seasoned worshipers would come into the house of worship, when they would come into the church, immediately before engaging in any social conversation, they would take their seat, bow their head, in a moment of quiet reflection with the Lord. That was their opportunity to thank God for bringing them through another week. It was their opportunity to thank God for being in his presence one more time.
One more time.
It was an opportunity for them to thank God and to ask him before the worship even started to forgive me of my sins. It was in those brief moments that they had their little talk with the Lord, asking the Lord to clean their mind. I'm going to pause here. If you haven't done that yet, I'm going to pause for you to have the opportunity to do that. When we come into the center of worship, we have to come in with a clean slate. Stick a point there. Coming back to that point. In other words, there has to be a clear divide between what's going on out there with you and what's going on in here with you. Because what you process in here ought to help you deal with whatever you got to deal with out there. I wish I had 20 people who could get on board with that right there. Let me give it to you once again. Coming in here should not be an act of perfunctory. Something just to do.
That's right. Yeah.
But coming in here should be intentional.
Yeah.
Purposeful. Free that I might get whoever is preaching this morning. Whether I like the preacher or not.
Yeah.
But I come open to hear a word.
Amen.
That when I leave here, that word can anchor me against any demon that I might run up against.
Hallelujah.
Today or tomorrow.
Yes.
What you take from here should help you take the high road with power and conviction. Listen, so that you are not tapped out and stressed out by every interruption and every wind of adversity that come into your life. Something ought to anchor you. And you ought to come looking for it. I don't know who I'm talking to, but some of you have people in your space that can't handle you after you leave the worship center. They might catch up with you around Wednesday or Thursday when the coals of your fire have died down.
Wednesday.
But immediately after worship, when the Spirit of the Lord is upon you, you are out of step with their step.
Listen.
Come hear me for a second. And the natural recourse for those who can't handle you is for them to marginalize you and downplay your transformation as if it is cheap.
Amen.
Please hear me. And if the relationship is important to you, you will feed into that person's dominant pathology, because it will be more important for you to have their relationship than it would be to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And having them in your space is tangible. But because you have not God that you can feel him, you understand him as being intangible. There then exists this dichotomy of allegiance. And to be expected in their space and to be accepted by them, I must then make light of my own anointing and my own transformation, because my vision of my life is so nearsighted and the fulfillment of my desires are immediate without any consideration for the cost. And at this stage, I don't even value my own self-worth. Because being validated by other people is more important than self-validation.
Right there, sir. Right there.
Talking to us this morning about taking the high road. Where you, listen to me, where you are so secure that some stuff you don't even waste your time responding to.
Yes, sir. Come on now. Yeah.
In fact, some stuff you don't even put up the hand to say, talk to the hand. Because you don't entertain the ignorance. And the hand doesn't have time to address it either. Hear me for a second.
Wow.
Those who, my background is in education, undergraduate degrees in special education.
Hey! Now.
And so I work with children.
Yes, God.
That's my work. It's the work of my wife.
Praise God.
And so we've had a conversation about what I want to share with you, and I want you to follow me with this because this is deep. And so counselors who do the work of working with children therapeutically, if you will. One of the things that counselors shun in working with children when they're trying to provide counseling service for kids from a therapeutic mental health state or standpoint, one of the things that they shun is providing therapeutic services to children without providing the same service for the family.
Yeah. Wrap around.
What they have discovered is that when they work with the child and provide the child with certain skills to cope in their home environment or wherever the environment is, when they work with the child is malleable to the point where that child can adapt to the counseling skills and then transfer the skills outside of the counseling setting. But when that child goes back to the home, their natural environment, what they've discovered is that the home situation unravels all of the counseling techniques that the counselor has given the child.
Yes, sir.
Because the family has a need to have the child to be sick when they themselves are sick. And when the child becomes transformed, the child then exposes the family to everybody else in terms of just how sick they are.
Yes, sir. Woo! God. That's good.
Paul is teaching us through the lens of this text that we must have intentional and deliberate purposes for coming to the Lord's house. If we intend to take the high road, then the Lord's house should be the place of authentic spiritual therapy. It should be the place where you and I are able to come week after week. In fact, we shouldn't even be able to wait until the doors open. We should be making our way to the place of worship because it is for us our therapeutic session of spiritual impartation. And so, you in this room are aware of the toxic insanity that is coming out of Washington and spilling out all across the globe. You are aware of the racial hatred and tension that is fueling this country daily. The toxicity of hatred and racial injustice. And if you and I are not transformed daily, we are not transformed weekly, the craziness that is perpetrated out of Washington or your workplace or even your family situation, that can make you feel as if you're the one that's crazy and everybody else around you is normal. trying to help us understand this morning that crazy can disguise itself as being normal. And you have to tell yourself, lest you find yourself being twisted, that God is calling you to a higher order. He's calling us to a place of mind renewal. Somebody has got to articulate hope in the midst of despair. Who better to do it than the Lord's people? Somebody has to articulate light in the midst of darkness. The truth of the matter is that people have normalized abnormal behavior.
Amen.
And normal folk live their lives in a state of paranoia. And increasingly we are experiencing just how rude. I don't know if you've noticed this. Maybe not on this part of town, but where we live. People are rude. Increasingly becoming rude. Increasingly becoming mean. Increasingly becoming nasty. For no rhyme or reason. Mean and nasty folk. It's almost like it's open season for folk to just come on out and behave any kind of way. And you are called to demonstrate the love and kindness of Jesus. And I want to tell you that it's a tough call. I get it. And we live in a society where people are angry. And they don't even know why they're angry. Babies are angry.
Yes, they are.
Young people are angry. The youth are angry. The adults are angry. Elderly folk are angry. And God knows they got reason to be angry. Anytime 5 pills can cost you $100 a week, they have right to be angry. But some of us have folk in our space that's angry for no reason, and I'm trying to help you understand that the low road has a traffic jam of angry people. And there's no heavenly vision of the Lord's people. The Lord's people are not speaking out with the prophetic vision from heaven. Because it almost gives the impression that the Lord's people are overwhelmed. And they don't believe any good thing can come from their word. And so we're not talking about anything. We're not talking about the Lord. Give thought to what I want to share with you here. Most of the killings that are taking place in our communities, please hear me through here, are perpetuated by young people who are now 25 and 30 and 35 years old. These are the children of parents 25, 30, and 35 years ago who we called and knew then as babies having babies. These are their children. For many of them, they are a generation that knew not Joseph. Their grandparents and their parents hung their harps on the willow tree. And they refused to sing the songs of Zion. And decided that they weren't going to raise their children the way that they were raised. And now children who have no opportunity to pay bills, we've given them voice. We're getting ready to open school.
Yes, sir.
These are they that curse teachers.
Yes, sir.
And disrespect their mothers.
Yes, sir.
These are they that disrespect their women, if not their wives. These are they that have produced children but don't pay child support. These are the mothers of those now who allow the streets to raise their children and call their young boys their boo. Paul is teaching us that we have to break free from any environment that does not seek to empower us to be the kind of creation that God had created us to be in the first place. How are y'all doing? Because I can narrow this down. Tell me how you feel. I think one of the things that grieves the heart of God, Kevin, It's how I believe we have miscalculated the joys of how life was meant to be.
Yeah. Hallelujah.
And the whole problem takes us back to the garden. When man was not satisfied with the way God had called creation into existence. And so man calls himself making it right. And man called himself determining that God had made a problem. Paul is calling us to dare call those of us, rather, who would dare call ourselves Christian. He's calling us to a higher standard of living. That's what taking the high road is. That I don't allow somebody else's craziness.
Come on now.
That's your stuff.
Yes, that's yours.
Stay right there. That's right. Stay right there.
When you're traveling through the airport, they tell you up front, you see a package, you don't touch it. And some of us are carrying luggage that doesn't belong to us. So he's calling us to take the high road.
Come on.
We talked earlier. I don't even give you the pleasure of saying talk to the hand. No, you can't talk to the hand.
That's right.
The hand is ignoring ignorance.
Come on.
Some stuff you just can't entertain.
That's right.
Because you have to be at a higher level of how you process.
Receive that, son.
That's all I'm trying to tell you. If you don't
Got
get
it.
anything else out of the
Got
message.
it.
So Paul admonishes us to not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our mind. Listen, because the music of the world will one day stop. Listen to me. And it will be an awful thing to one day for you to stand at the banks of Jordan and not have a ticket
Come on.
to cross over.
Come on.
Because your time was wasted on the low road.
Listen.
Wow.
You were dancing the night away.
Listen.
Come on.
You spent all your time in the mirror, getting the nails and the hair.
Yeah.
And you spend no time with him.
Okay.
And now you come to the end of the journey
Okay.
and you don't have a ticket to board, to go across to the other side. Paul is challenging the Christian individual that you and I have to live our lives at the high road. When you know you have people in your space that will take you there, you got to be able to call on the name of the Lord in that quick second and say, help me, Lord.
Yeah.
Lord.
And then when he has kept your tongue from saying the stuff that you know so well, because some of us, I admit, I know you won't, I'm bilingual. On a long day, after a long time, you cross me, and you will get it. I'll deal with asking for forgiveness after the fact. So I know I'll go there. I don't want you to provoke me there. So I'm going to stay away from you. Because I'm not going to miss my anointing and my blessing fooling at you and feeling good that I went there and said what I needed to say. Try to help you understand. We're going to fast forward some of this. Trying to help us understand. I dare say that some of you in here would have to admit that you have been transformed. When I look around this room, I'm looking in the ceiling so nobody will think I'm looking at them. When I look around this room, I've scouted the place before I got up. I know that 99% of us in here, we're going to save the babies. 99% of us in here have been transformed. We are not the people that we once were. You want to thank God for that?
Yes.
And listen to this. without a price. I know that some of you, and you know it better than I'm able to articulate it, have gone through some changes and have disciplined yourself to learn how to turn the plate down. I know some of you have disciplined yourself to be self-denial of worldly pleasures. And that this is your brand new you. Do I have a witness in here?
Amen.
How many of you in here would admit that your now is the new and improved you? And you look better now than the stuff that you have been through and survived. Let me help you with this. One of the whiners helped us with this. Your alabaster oil is expensive. And you can't afford at this juncture of your life to waste your oil on folk who aren't going where you are going and who aren't serious about the things that you are serious and committed to. You don't have time to be wasting your expensive oil on them. There comes a time in all of our lives when you and I must draw the line in the sand and declare that enough is enough. Talking to you this morning about taking the highway. Let me move through here. There are a couple of ladies in my church, old ladies, that congregate every Sunday morning right out in the narthex of the church. And they're from the South. And this guy engaged me in conversation one Sunday to engage them. Little did I know that they had a running conversation about bull turkey necks. And they every Sunday say, I'm going home and I'm going to have these turkey necks. So they invited me in a conversation one Sunday morning, and I said to the ladies, no disrespect, the elderly ladies, I said, listen, I wasn't raised on no church turkey necks, and I don't eat turkey necks. In fact, I don't like them. I said, there's no meat on the bone. So they been trying to convince me that I'm missing out on a delicious meal. And so the woman said to me, okay, we got a witness over there. Woman said to me, she said, Reverend, you got to have the turkey necks with some gravy and a biscuit. She says, you got to slop that gravy with that biscuit. And she said, that's the best meal you will ever have in your life. And so every Sunday, we go through this turkey neck bone conversation. I see it coming. I've been trying to avoid it for the last couple of Sundays. But they told a woman last Sunday to touch me. Touch me. And when I looked, she said, come over here. And I went over there. And they wanted to have this conversation again about these turkey neck bones that I don't like and I don't eat them. Here's the point that I'm trying to get into your thinking this morning. That some of us are unavailable for the process of transformation. Because we are still nursing the honey from the carcass. But for those who have made themselves available and have made the sacrifice of temporary pleasures and acts of immediate self-gratification to pay the high cost for their alabaster oil, have made themselves available for however God wants to use them. What am I saying to some of us in here this morning? That some of us are nursing some stuff that is causing us not to be transformed because we enjoy it at a level that we cannot dismiss ourselves from. But I dare not have that conversation with those ladies. Some of us this morning are enjoying some stuff when we leave here. That, granted, you worked hard to get. But was Christ factored in the equation? How much stuff do you possess that Christ has not co-signed
Yeah.
for you to have.
Yeah.
And it's getting in the way
Yes. Come on.
of your relationship with him.
Yes, sir.
I am going to fast forward some of this because I think you guys have gotten the message this morning. Let me scout here and see what I want to share with you as we
Take your
move this
time,
to a
sir.
close. There are those who seek validation from other people.
Likes.
I was talking to my son about this message. Individuals that have skills and talents, savvy, but won't apply for the job.
Listen. Come on.
Comfortable and satisfied where they are.
Come on.
Because nobody has validated for them that you can do it.
Yeah.
And that you ought to go for it.
Come on. Somebody else.
Because they live their lives. There are people in relationships for whom the relationship is not good for them.
Come on.
But they feel some kind of way if they're not in it.
Come on. Come on.
Because they have no appreciation for what they bring to the moment. Because they seek the validation from everybody else. You down on yourself. You have to ask for how low. You so down on yourself that people know your weakness to the point where they placate to it and take advantage of it.
Placate.
At 35, 40, 45, 50, you're still comfortable with the many excuses as to why you have parked in a handicapped spot.
Come on. Come on.
And you're willing to pay the cost for the ticket.
Come on.
Because you don't believe that you can walk up the sidewalk by yourself.
By yourself. My. That's good, sir. Good.
And for some of us, there's no change because there's no acknowledgement.
Wow.
Trying to help us understand, I'm moving to a close. Bear with me for a few seconds here. Paul is saying to us that the craziness of this world is out of control because there's no light from God's people to guide people out of their darkness. You don't even talk about how good he is in your life on the job.
Listen.
And the morning is beginning to look like the night. And the nights are becoming increasingly dark. Who then are the people of light? Who then are the Lord's people? And I said to us early on that when you come to this spiritual therapeutic center, you ought to come with a clear mind so that you can receive here what you need when you leave here to deal with what you have to deal with. And this place cannot look like the world. There has to be something different and unique about the house up on the pipe.
Amen.
What happened to the testimonies of God's people? When you think about the fact that how the Lord met you at some places, I'm talking about me right now.
Okay.
But you wouldn't be honest. And transformed your life. Two things have to happen with that. Either you go back to the place where you used to be, and not by verbal communication, but by your behavior and your actions, that you advertise how he has made a difference in your life.
Advertise. Yes, sir.
One of the young rappers in Baltimore was murdered.
Okay.
And what we understand from that situation, in part, we don't know the full story, but the little bit that we did get was how he was this transformed person.
Yes.
but he went back to that community.
That's right.
And some people, by their very nature, are simply haters.
Oh! Yeah.
They can't handle your transformation.
That's right.
So knowing that you don't want to go back to that group, they have to see you from the perspective and from the area from where you now travel. Because you are at a different road. You're on the high road.
Yeah.
Everybody can't handle your transformation. But the point I'm trying to raise to us this afternoon, or still morning, is the fact that what has happened rather to our testimony.
Okay.
Why is it that we are acting so prim and proper and so Gucci
Right there, sir.
as if we don't have a pass?
That's right.
And we fronting